Hi Blue. G'day. We're back again. Did you enjoy that last story? It was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah. Got another fabulous book to read. This one, hope you're not scared. It's about monsters. Oh, you like monsters? Awesome. You go and get comfortable, just the same as what the children are going to, and we'll start our book. Good morning, everybody. We have got a little monster book today. It's called Yuck. That's not a monster. And it's written by Angela McAllister and Alison Edson. Get comfortable, we'll get started. Mr. and Mrs. Monster were very proud of their 3 eggs. Mr. Monster kept them warm by huffing with his hot, stinky breath. Mrs. Monster screeched at them. 1, 2, 3. One stormy night, the first egg opened. Out climbed an ugly little monster with prickly spikes and snarly fangs. Ah, he's frightful, sighed Mr. and Mrs. Monster happily. So that's what they called him. Then the second egg cracked. Out climbed another ugly little monster with horny spines and bristly warts. Ooh, she's horrid, gasped Mr. and Mrs. Monster happily. So that's what they called her. Then the third egg shook a bit. Frightful and Horrid gave it a poke. Out crept something very soft and pink. Ugh, he's sweet, said the little monsters. Let's squash him. Well, he's not what we expected, said Mrs. Monster. He is a bit of a shock. Let's throw him in the rubbish bin, said Mr. Monster. Suddenly, there was a crash of thunder. Mama! Cried the fluffy one, and jumped into Mrs. Monster's arms. She looked down at her bundle of sweetness. I think we'll keep him, she said. He may look different, but inside he is a monster, just like us. So they called him Little Shock. Each day, Frightful and Horrid grew hairier and scarier. They learned how to spit and hiss and snarl and scratch. But Little Shock grew more fluffy. He liked to gurgle and roly-poly and twinkle his big blue eyes. He loved his brother and sister and followed them everywhere. If you want to play with us, you've got to be wild and rampageous, said Frightful and Horrid. They showed him how to howl at the moon until it hid behind a cloud. But Little Shock was afraid of the dark. They showed him how to squash and stamp and trample. But Little Shock saw a worried worm and sat down to give it a hug. Ugh, sneered Frightful and Horrid. He's just a cutie pie. Soon Frightful and Horrid were bold enough to go monstering in the wood. You must take your brother with you, insisted Mrs. Monster. Frightful and Horrid started grumpily, but they put Little Shock into a trolley, hid him under a blanket and tugged him along. In the wood, Frightful leapt out at a fox and made its fur turn white. Horrid pounced on a wild pig and made it jump into a tree. They had a wonderful time. Little Shock cuddled his blanket and played peekaboo with a mouse. "What shall we play now?" said Frightful. "Let's find something big to scare," said Horrid. Something big rustled in the bushes ahead, so they crept up on it. Frightful and Horrid saw a hairy lump. They winked at each other. They took a deep breath and roared. But the hairy lump was only a little bit of the big monster. It snarled and flashed its fiery eyes. "Who dared to roar at me?" Frightful and Horrid were too terrified to run away. Their spines shriveled and their claws curled up. Suddenly, the big monster spotted Little Shock. "Ooh, candy floss," he said. Little Shock stared up at the monster's face. His big blue eyes grew wider and wider. Then, mwah! He gave the monster a kiss right on the cheek. Yuck! The big monster wailed and dropped Little Shock in horror. He was so afraid that his fur turned to frizz and his bristles fell out. "Help!" he cried. "It's adorable!" And he ran away crying for his mummy. Frightful and Horrid couldn't believe their eyes. "You kissed him! You kissed him!" they laughed. Horrid swung her little brother high in the air and sat him on Frightful's shoulders. "Maybe being cute could be useful after all," she said, giving him a pinch. Little Shock just purred happily. "Come on then," said Frightful proudly. "Let's go home and all kiss Mum and Dad." The end. Yuck. That's not a monster.